Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live episode 107. I'm Tristan Jutra,
I'm Tasia Custodi.
I'm Will Silver.
and hopefully joining us soon will be Gray Williams. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
TBD.
TBD. So on today's decidedly non-political edition of Momentum.
Yes.
You know, we have so many things that we could talk about and have talked about that we could have 5 shows a week just on different topics. We could have
Sure.
momentous crypto, we could have momentous AI, momentous at the movies, we could have momentous
Marvel
Much
momentous.
yeah. We could have momentous politics if we really wanted to, and our lives would be even more miserable. So yeah, that's because we could have space momentous or momentous in space. There's just so many things. There's only so many hours in the day. But you just say the word, guys. 5 nights a week, we'll do it. All right.
I'm good, Doug.
So I know Tasia's super excited because she's got so much spare time. Oh,
Yeah, we're hanging in on this one night, okay? Let's not push it.
Fair enough. All right, so let's do a quick little bit of follow-up here, and we've got some little bit of ChatGPT stories in our AI docket. ChatGPT gets eyes and ears with plugins that can interface AI with the world. So near the end of March, it was announced. We didn't get a chance to talk about this previously, but a handful of plugins have been released for ChatGPT, in addition to an interface to actually manage them. It's in limited testing at the moment for folks who want to be able to let ChatGPT interface with the rest of the world a little bit. One of the things, as we all know and are kind of get frustrated with a little bit, is how the ChatGPT's knowledge base only goes up till some point in 2021, whereas the Bing version that uses ChatGPT 4 actually has live access to the web. Well, with some of the plugins that are available with this new framework for ChatGPT, one could plug in something called Browser. There's also Wolfram Alpha you can plug in for doing more computational sort of questions and answers. We all know ChatGPT is not that great at math. Oh, by the way, some folks, I believe in Australia and maybe New Zealand, are calling ChatGPT Chatty G. And
of course,
I'm thinking maybe we start doing that too. Some of the other plugins are from OpenTable. We got Fiscal Notes for market-leading real-time data sets. Instacart, Zapier, which is for connecting different apps and platforms together for automation. So like Google Sheets, Trello, Gmail, HubSpot, Salesforce, and more. Kayak for your travel and your flight stays and rental cars. There's something called Milo Family AI. Oh, it's the wisdom of the village to give parents ideas that turn any 20 minutes from meh to magic. And Speak, an AI-powered language tutor, and more. So I'm on the waiting list for this. Some people have some concerns about this. One such opinion was shared by someone named Christian Guyton on Tech Radar a couple of weeks ago, saying basically ChatGPT is great and all, but do we really want to connect it to all these things out in the world? Because it's not sure about the quality of the advice it might get, especially once there are different sorts of incentives at play from all these other private companies that are looking to make a buck. So that's just sort of an interesting perspective there. If you're interested in accessing these plugins, eventually you can get the waiting list. It'll be on our show notes at openai.com/blog/chatgpt-plugins. But in related news is that a few days ago, there was a public letter published and signed by, I think, it's up to 40 or 50,000 people now. But some of the big prominent people who have signed this letter include Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, Elon Musk, and Yuval Noah Harari, and others, saying that GPT-4 poses too many risks and releases should be halted. There should be a pause put on this AI development, specifically ChatGPT development. So my question to you, starting with you, Will, given how quickly ChatGPT and OpenAI behind it have been able to progress, um, given that the claims in here say are alleging that there's some FTC concerns about unfair or deceptive acts or practices. They didn't really get into details there. OpenAI hasn't, which was supposedly originally when Elon Musk was involved, the idea was it was going to be a bit more open source and it was supposed to be a nonprofit, and that has kind of changed since Microsoft has invested a bunch of money in it, and now there's a bit more capitalistic fiscal considerations involved here. And some of the other concerns is that they released GPT-4 with full knowledge of risks, whereby we've seen Google's approach as being a little safer, a few more guardrails, and and as such, maybe it hasn't done quite as well. And Tasia will tell us a little bit more about that later on in the show. And then, of course, some security and privacy worries. There was a bit of a glitch a few weeks ago where people's prompts were exposed to other people potentially. I never saw that, but not the details of one's chat, but the little titles that it gives. Actually, sorry, not even the prompts, but the titles that are given to the individual chat. Somehow something bled across different user accounts. So with all that in mind, starting with you, Will, my question to you is that all these people signing on here, and when you look at the number and the variety of people, do you think this is founded, or do you think that this is maybe some people, some competitors going, we need ChatGPT or we need OpenAI to slow down with their efforts so we can catch up? And it's kind of a cynical play, trying to put the reins on what's ostensibly the market leader after only 3 months in the market, and to set the table. Like, this has been the single fastest adoption of any technology ever. 100 million people in the first 2 months.
So,
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm not a detractor. I'm a fan of various AI, but I do have to say sometimes I have some concerns personally that we're hitting the ground running and sort of doing open betas, which it's not unprecedented with software.
Google's been doing that for decades.
Yeah, exactly.
Gmail was in beta for how many years?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So, I mean, and the web, I mean, they often don't fully ratify a version of HTML for a decade.
Yeah.
So
HTML5 took a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not unprecedented. I think there are some concerns here because this is a bit of a new technology that we don't know what it could be used for in the wild, or we're still trying to figure that out. Maybe we don't have all the full knowledge of how it could be misused, or things like that. Like even the web, people thought it would be this great place of intellectual discussion and all this kind of stuff and sharing of knowledge, and sometimes it feels like less knowledge is shared than should be. But no, I mean, I have some concerns too. I think your original question was, is this cynical or is this an actual concern? Maybe a little from column A, a little from column B. It definitely rings true that we should be careful about what we're doing here. We don't want to just, give the baby a handgun. We want to, we want to be careful and measured in our approach. I send a message to you guys, as I think viewers will know if you've seen the show before. I like Midjourney and other AI image generating tools, Stable Diffusion and things of that nature. I see some creepy things. I see some people, prompting things like, 22-year-old white woman sitting at a bar with spaghetti string dress, like, just things that's a little bit like, you can't stop people from doing that, but it's like I don't know. I think also I've seen so much of it that at first it didn't sort of bother me, and that I see so much of these things that people are finding ways around boundaries, like Playboy or nude or scantily clad, like, see-through shirt showing nipples. Like I've seen things like this, and it's just like, yeah, like, what do we want people to use it for? Do you know what I mean? Like, are things like that okay? Are they not? Have we had those considerations? Yeah. Anyways, I kind of threw a lot out there, but I think it's probably not bad to think about it, to stop a little bit before you just rush to publish something just because you're worried about money. But at the same time, certainly these people do have a vested interest, some of them.
Mm-hmm. And just for context, when you mentioned the sorts of prompts and results that you've been seeing in Midjourney as a generative AI platform is used through the Discord app, which was originally sort of a communications, like a chat app, not entirely unlike Slack, but kind of centered around the gaming community. And some of these tools are being fed through Discord because there's all sorts of hooks and APIs to connect to back-end systems, such as Midjourney. But the nature of a lot of these channels in Midjourney is that you can, in the interest of sharing, you can see the kinds of prompts that people are entering, and then also the results that are generated. And so, it gives you a little insight into the human psyche there for sure. And
but I also learn a lot. Like I learn a lot from what people are prompting, not the 23-year-old woman wearing a spaghetti strap dress at the bar. But I learn like to put all sorts of things at the end, like HD, high octane render, like pixel art, just things that tag at the end to get different effects. And the way that people are, some people use, Tristan, I was sharing one with you that was like a small essay. It was like 16,000 words. This person was prompting all these things. And then some people just use 4 words with commas. So, and to see what kind of results people get from different approaches is useful. I just read so many of them that some of them are just a little bit like creep. Oh, okay, that's interesting. creep. Like,
the only difference being that in the past the creeps would just be like searching for these things in Google and no one could see their Google searches. So Teja, given that what the concerns expressed in this open letter aren't necessarily about some of these concerns, like with Midjourney and the creeptastic things that have been happening, but specifically centering around OpenAI and ChatGPT as powered by GPT-4, given how much better it is than GPT 3.5. What's your take on this? Are these concerns legitimate? Like, what is the actual danger here? Or do you think that maybe it's a bit of a ploy to try to get the market leader just to slow down a little bit while everyone else plays catch up?
No, I think it's not a ploy. I think there is an actual danger. The question is, how do you put the genie back in the bottle? I mean, now that everybody's kind of got their hands on it and it's like out to the public, it's not so easy. I think the biggest issue right now is, we talk about this all the time, when the tech is moving faster than government regulations, or even some people in the government understand what this is, like, it's, how do you regulate something that is growing so rapidly and at such a pace and such a user uptick like this, like exactly like what you're saying, like we've never seen anything like this before. I don't think anybody was really prepared for it. Like on the user end, on the government end, companies obviously like Google, who have been sitting on this tech forever, were obviously prepared that this was going to happen, and that's why they never released it. And then now, out of pure, oh, well, if they did it first, okay, then we'll just go. It's kind of happening, but still at a slower, somewhat more controlled pace. But it does pose some risks. I love it. Like, don't get me wrong. I love it. I use it. I love this tech. I think it's fun to explore new opportunities like this, but it's easy for us to say that and be super naive about it because we use it in appropriate ways, or in ways that, hopefully aren't detrimental to people. So it's just, to me, one of those things where it's like, how do you put a stop in it now? How do you say, wait until we can figure out some regulations? That's the question.
Well, yeah. And the question is, would regulations actually help, or would government just actually get in the way of innovation, as it sometimes does in certain fields? What in your mind are the biggest risks that you see? Because people, because the thing that jumps to my mind is like, aren't there greater risks in what we've seen with generative imagery and generative video and generative audio, whereby you can doing increasingly realistic deep fakes of the potentially public figures and whatnot? And what are the ramifications of that? There's no open letter about that going on right now. They're targeting GPT, like open AI, right? So what in your mind are the risks of the GPT-4 specifically?
Well, I don't think
maybe it'll make your YouTube titles too awesome?
No, I don't think you're too far off though. Like, especially as we're gonna come into an election here in the States, and there's a huge concern in regards to misinformation. Like, if we thought it was bad in the last 2 election cycles, the concern I have, and where I can see things like any of these chatbots going, is once people realize they can start generating their own like back-end SEO and blog articles and things of that nature, and then those articles start being pulled from as if it's pulling from that data. Now, I know like ChatGPT right now is pulling from 2021 and earlier, so that's why I'm looping all chatbots into this. But it's like, that to me becomes a concern of misinformation, because I know we already get the little warnings on them, like some of the responses you get are not going to be accurate. Nobody's reading that. Nobody cares. They just think it's like such cool tech. So that's like my biggest concern right now, is just the misinformation of it all, I think, and how we can, much like all of these AI softwares, if you will, for lack of a better term, pull from that database. So every time you're creating something, it's now also put into that database that it can then pull from. I think that's where like the first concern lies for me, like in the immediate future.
Right. Kind of the pollution of the information landscape even further, almost like making a photocopy of a photocopy over time. And it's like, what was source information and what is new information based on that source information. I mean, I guess that also happens to a large extent now when you think about like a press release goes out, and actually, well, I'll mention this in a story we'll talk about a little bit later on. A press release goes out and it gets picked up by some news outlet, and then that news outlet is actually part of a network, and then you're seeing the same story on a bunch of different news outlets, and sometimes they change a little bit, and sometimes like I've seen, or like they get, and then there's random blogs and whatnot. Sometimes the story, especially if in something in the past, you're trying to find the source, and it takes like a number of hops back through backlinks, if they're even there, to figure out what the actual source is. So this is not a new problem, but it could be potentially accelerated or magnified. And it's really going to be incumbent on folks to just to be so careful when vetting information. I mean, a classic, this is not a text thing, it's an imagery thing. But last week, so many people were duped by the image of Pope Francis in a puffy coat, right?
Yeah.
So many people were duped by that. Like people that I listen to, like on podcasts, like tech pundits, it's like, oh my God, look at that. And they're like, oh yeah, what do you know? It's actually AI generated. It's like, if you looked a little more closely, or if you thought for a minute about it, it's like, do you think the Pope's really going to be rocking like Balenciaga or whatever? Like,
but this is like, it's the same. And I think Will's probably going to touch on this with like a different example, but it's like when you mentioned like the voice, AI generators and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like I'm already seeing them on Instagram Reels, like hearing it. So people are taking like a voice that would be like Taylor Swift's voice, but they're saying things that like she would either never say, or things that, and like they're funny for now. You know what I mean? Like I understand it as soon as like I scroll to it, like, oh, I get the irony of this. Like that's but like I'm also an adult with like a somewhat education. Like I cannot imagine being like teenage me obsessed with the Backstreet Boys, and then like you're hearing all this audio and you think it's like Nick Carter or something, or you think whatever, and then you're just like, oh my God, like where is the line now? And then we talk about this all the time, but like then when stuff like that comes to like, who owns that? And to someone that's their voice and their money is made off of that, or their writing or the voice or whatever, like if you take their likeness, like, does it mean nothing because they're already celebrity? Like, does it fall under that kind? I mean, there's just so much. And then when you think of like fraudulent calls and like robocalls and like just the way people can get scammed now, like, oh God, the genie's out.
It's a Pandora's box.
Freaking me out.
And why are the Backstreet Boys telling me that 9/11 was an inside job?
Like, what do you mean?
but the harmony, I can't stop listening.
So catchy.
Yeah. But yeah, Tasha's right that I was going to bring up this story. I don't think I made our actual live stream a few weeks ago, but DJ, I'm going to butcher his last name, David Guetta.
I think it's Guetta. David Guetta.
Guetta?
That's what I say. I don't know.
Let's keep talking about the pronunciation of his last name rather than the story.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's get the important things first. But yeah, I mean, there was a bit of, I guess, it made a bit of a splash, especially what he did was he played a song and it had a sample that sounded like Eminem's voice, and all it said, like, the future of techno or something. Mm-hmm. And the crowd that he played it to live went bananas because it sounded like Eminem, and this was a great sample, and it worked really well on the song. And now the DJ is quick to point out that this is just a remix. He's not selling it. It was just in a live performance. But it opens up a whole Pandora's box in terms of, like Tasha said, who owns the sound of your voice? I think Eminem was rightly a little miffed or thrown off by this, just because he started getting tagged like crazy about it. He's a pretty famous DJ, not quite my cup of tea, but he's one of the world's best DJs. And yeah, I mean, he actually, to your point, Tristan, is now some of these technologies are sort of use each other. Like GPT is often used by certain things, but he also used ChatGPT to generate the lyrics for the voice fake that he used. So he didn't just use one AI, he used two AIs. Exactly. So I mean, that's another point. It's not only did he steal the voice, he stole, I guess, ChatGPT's version of what Eminem might say.
Yeah, well, it's not really stealing it. I mean, he just used it.
Used. Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't use the
word
stealing.
But to your point, he's using at least two different tools there. But think how much easier it's going to be with this new plugin architecture, to harken back to what we were talking about a little earlier, whereby you can connect different pieces together. I saw a demo online earlier today of a guy who had set a couple of things up with some Siri shortcuts and some back-end stuff connecting to GitHub, and using the coding power of, I believe it was GPT-4, and he did request on his Apple Watch to add a feature to a web interface he was coding. He asked it to set, like, or insert a reset button into like a chat interface or whatever. He described it to his watch, and then the watch talked to something in the background, and it went in and updated like 2 or 3 different files in his GitHub repo, his repository, and it updated those, and then he was able to refresh, and the web page that he'd been working on had the feature that he described to his freaking watch. So you think about the productivity gains that can be done with these kinds of things especially when you start connecting them all together. But again, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So it's interesting times. Just so to your point, well, he had said, David Guetta said, I discovered those websites that are about AI. Basically, you can write lyrics in the style of any artist you like. So I typed, write a verse in the style of Eminem about future rave. And I went to another AI website that can recreate the voice. I put the text in that and I played the record, and people went nuts. So yeah, I mean, it gets into questions of, what's fair use. People have been doing things in the style of other people for ages, whether it's riffs or just vibe, or there's been all sorts of lawsuits. There's songwriting. Well, it's a voice. It's not actually Eminem's voice, but it's a voice that sounds like his. And is it trying to mislead people, et cetera, et cetera? So yeah, I mean,
and he was open and honest. He said what he did. He didn't pretend that it wasn't. He didn't. I don't know if he said during the performance, but afterwards he totally said what happened, and he was quick to say, I'm not making money off of it. I am not selling that song.
That's a whole other story, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gone are the days of creativity, y'all.
Yeah.
So to your earlier point, pre-show point, Tasia, we're almost at the end of our follow-up. Just one more story. let's make this quick.
Pre-show,
Half an hour
I
in.
said to TJ, it will be 30, 35 minutes into this show before we're done with follow-up. Prove me wrong.
Well, you all have just such great points that you're making so mellifluously. So just a quick follow-up. Last week we were talking about potential TikTok ban and the grilling of the TikTok CEO by the US Congress, et cetera, and what might the implications be for TikTok, the company, and its parent company ByteDance, and the China-US relations. And if something, because there's a lot of people who are on board, but from both sides of the political aisle, that about this very bipartisan effort. Not everyone is on board, but some of the concerns that have come out when people started looking at the details of the so-called Restrict Act, and I don't recall what all those letters in the word restrict mean, but they like to do those little cutesy names. Mm-hmm. But one of the key, some of the key details are, well, there's some vague language, which include terms like, so this isn't written about TikTok specifically. It could be applied to virtually any online app or platform that the government deems problematic for whatever reason. Again, the US government. And where the US government goes, others often follow. Or like they like to photocopy each other's ideas. Like Canada is currently thinking about doing the whole standardization of like USB-C, just like EU did. It's like, get an original idea, guys. Anyway, so so desktop applications, mobile applications, gaming applications, payment applications, and web-based applications. It also targets applicable software that has more than 1 million users in the US. So there's one person from an organization called Access Now said, there's another angle to this that no one really thought about too much. As written, the broad language in the Restrict Act could criminalize the use of a VPN, significantly impacting access to security tools and other applications that vulnerable people rely on for privacy and security. Many individuals and organizations, including journalists, activists, and human rights defenders, use VPNs to protect their online activity from surveillance and censorship. Again, kind of going back to some issues we were talking about in the pre-show about tools at our disposal to work against the purposes of potentially corrupt or authoritarian governments and the like. And those sometimes are digital tools and sometimes they're deadly tools, but that's a whole other issue. The Restrict Act would expose these groups to monitoring and repression, which could have a chilling effect on free speech and expression. So there are other folks, probably from, I imagine the Electronic Frontier Foundation has stuff to say on this as well. So it's just good to pump the brakes a little when there are these large, potentially sweeping changes that are kind of billed as something. Oh yeah, we're just going to go over TikTok because China bad, and user privacy and security, and also a potential influence on the public's opinions, and maybe especially as we get closer to elections and whatnot. And also to your point, you had mentioned this earlier, Tasia, the fact that we're talking about a U.S. election 18 months ahead of it is part of the problem. Honestly, like that's crazy making. It's like you've just finished a midterm election and now you start talking about campaign for the presidential election, and on it goes. And
look, they talk about the next presidential election 5 minutes after it's just done.
But the fact that there's like elections every 2 years because there's the midterms and then the presidential just goes back and forth, and it's and so many people have to spend their time fundraising all the time instead of doing the freaking jobs. But we don't talk politics here on Momentous Live. It's a bipartisan issue. Everything is terrible. Anyhow, so. The moral of this story is it's good to look at the details, because no matter what the issue is, no matter what kind of government regulation or bills that come up that we may be supportive of on a surface reading, sometimes like the devil is in the details. So that's all the moral of the story is. So we'll see if this actually goes forward. Given that people are starting to raise some concerns, will it be edited a little bit? There's a lot of people who would have no problem at all, maybe if it was just going right after TikTok, but it's not. It's going after potentially everything that the US government could deem problematic. And that could be in itself problematic. Any thoughts before we move on?
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Okay, Tasia, you said we'd be done follow-up by 7:35 and it's 7:38. So we didn't quite make it, but that's okay, because the next stuff we're just going to power through because you're up next with a couple
I'm
of
up
stories about Twitter's verification process and the
Yes.
whole Twitter blue for not just individuals, but organizations, and a little bit of drama, silly drama that's unfolded over the last couple of days.
Yes,
Take it away, Tasia.
I want to preface this by apologizing to Will, because I know how much he loves Elon Musk, and I'm going to try not to say his name through these next two stories. So, you know,
I'm having a better week. Don't worry.
Yeah. The dude that bought Twitter, right? If we can say that.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. My dog's going crazy. I don't know why. She loves him too, apparently. So, I first want to take you through this really great little infographic from Social Media Today. And they give us a little history on Twitter verification, because I don't know if you guys really remember how this whole thing started. And this was really helpful because I didn't remember the exact dates. So it was like in May of 2009, basically a baseball player, like, right, or a manager sued.
Yep.
Sued because somebody was impersonating him. It's laughable now because like everybody's accounts are impersonated online, but like I didn't realize like that was like the crux of why verification even became a thing in general.
Doesn't JC have a couple accounts? Not the guy from the Backstreet Boys, but
yes,
the actual JC.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It's what makes Twitter so good. But so basically, like, it took only a couple months from there for Twitter to be like, you know what, we're going to make a verification process. And like in July, so only a couple months later, they started launching it, where it was essentially just users could confirm their accounts with IDs. But what then started happening was the public wanted it on that, because, you know, this was like, oh, if you're famous or something. Yeah, exactly. If you're a celebrity, then you can get, you know. Yes. So it went all the way from 2009 until 2016, when then Twitter was like, you know what, we're going to open it up to the public. However, they got so inundated with people being like, I want it, that they had to shut it down. Like literally a couple months later, they were like, nope, we cannot open this to the public. Like, forget it. So basically it stopped like by 2017, I think it was like done. And it's kind of been sitting like that for a few years. But there was a brief window in 2020 where they were like, we've got new guidelines and we're going to reopen it like to the public again. I remember this. I feel like it was like 2021. I kept going to the website because there was like a website you go to get verified.
Yep.
Guys, they shut it down again because it just like stayed on hold. It was pretty much every time you went to the website, it was like, no, under construction, like we're waiting. Remember that little tweet bird they used to have on there when it was like broken? So it basically never happened again. Flash forward to our favorite person, Will, taking over. And I think like near the end of end of 2022, he basically announced, we're going to have like a paid model for this. So it's pay to play. If you want to be verified, you got to pay. Essentially what this boils down to is this $8 a month Twitter Blue to get the blue verification checkmark, and also early access to other features and special access.
And all the other Twitter Blue features that people have been paying $3 a month before that. So they jacked the price. And
exactly.
But it was fatally flawed because...
Oh, well, it was... Which reason would you like? Basically, I love people sometimes so much. People, in order to protest this, started making a whole bunch of insane impersonation accounts going after verifications, including like him, Musk's account. There were like a bunch of other people that were pretending to be him and getting the verification. Do you remember like some celebrities did this to him too, to just prove how stupid this model was, that you're not helping spam like he claimed, you're not helping all of these things. Like obviously it's just a money-making thing. So once again, there was like a bit of a pause, and then Twitter decided we're going to like relaunch it. And this time, like it's got the new pricing, and we're going to add more badges because this will make it less confusing. And this will ensure that you are who you say you are. So like organizations would have like a different color badge. Like I think, is it gray for like an organization? And then like, if you, I'll get into the other organization in a second. So like hold that thought. But on top of the blue verification, which you could pay for. So now there's like multiple badge levels. Very confusing. Which led them to, at the beginning of this year, also announce a second monetization model, which is verification for organizations. This is going to cost organizations $1,000 a month to get a gold check mark. And then they can also pay, I believe it's an extra $50 a month to have affiliated accounts. And those might be gray badges, the color thing gets confusing. This is all separate, you guys, than us being able to get a blue verification badge. Okay? Is everybody following the verification timeline? It's very stressful. The reason I bring this all up is because this past week, starting April 1st, Twitter has decided that they're starting with this new verification process, essentially. So they made the announcement that, starting April 1 or whatever, it was going to be, you have to pay to play. You've got to be part of the blue, Twitter Blue. Those that are already verified, so like celebrities that have the blue check mark, you're not getting grandfathered in. You either pay this Twitter Blue price of $8 a month, or you're out, you're no longer verified. And then interestingly enough, and as an aside, he hasn't taken away verifications from certain organizations yet, except the New York Times, because he has a personal vendetta. It's so funny. It's not. It's terrible.
No.
And I'm not really
it is,
going to
but
help
it
the
isn't.
platform. I know, but so that's your history, you guys. Did you ever think you wanted or needed a complete history of the Twitter verification process? Because there it is for you. There is an infographic on social media today.
But this is also, you said this last week, and I love the way that you put it, so I don't want to butcher it. My version was that it's like being in a club. Like it's somebody else's territory. They can do whatever you want. I think you said shared ground or something like that, or what was you had an expression, I forget now, sorry.
Oh yeah, social media is rented ground. That's what
Rented
my client
ground.
always says. Yeah, you don't own it. Yeah,
now,
and then
he
you
can
have
do
the great
whatever he
pub
wants.
analogy.
He's in his rights to do so. So
exactly.
If you spend $44 billion for a social
Yeah.
network, you can like extract money out of whoever you want, punish whoever you want, etc. That's
but it's not a
lot.
public organization. Like this is a for-profit company. This is not this is not a government organization.
Profit's still a long ways away.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of this too. I mean, we know was the whole reason behind Twitter Blue is initially to start generating income, but the issue that I don't know that he did foresee was that when he took over and he created all of this frenzy, it actually caused things to tank a bit further. So, which may be part of the reason now why they've also introduced this verification for organizations, which is like this whole other can of worms, extremely expensive for organizations, because you can imagine how that would add up. So it's $1,000 a month plus $50 a month per affiliated account, which like even look at something like look at Twitter in and of itself. I mean, they're not going to charge themselves, but like, or you look at YouTube as an example. That might be the first organization account, but then you have YouTube support. You have YouTube for every country that it is affiliated with. You know what I mean? So like $50 each time, you could be up in the multiple thousands of dollars for these organizations. So he's announced this is rolling out, but also announced basically a pause on it and a pause, at least for the time being, on like the most popular accounts for organizations. So he's not going to charge, like, at least right now, is it the most 500 most popular accounts? I can't remember, but it's just kind of his way of, because people went, what? And organizations were like, we're not going to pay that. And then he was like, well, wait, if you're like the top like 500 most followed, then we won't do it to you right now. So it's just
because they provide a lot of value to Twitter itself. Yeah.
Yes. So he's kind of grasping, and he's kind of trying to figure out what sticks and what people will tolerate.
Yeah.
Because of course you have not just certain organizations saying no, go suck a duck, but you also have all the celebrities who, what's $8 a month? It's like nothing. They're absolutely, as principle of the matter, not doing it, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't know, like, what do you guys think? I mean, to me, once I see other social media accounts now, like I just got this notification last week on Instagram, like from Meta, being like, oh, you can apply now to be like Meta verified. I was like, sweet. And so like I tapped through, and it wants $15 a month for me to get a badge. And so then when you start comparing that, and you're like, wait, what's 8 now? You know, like, not that I'm gonna pay for that either, but it almost seems trivial now. And it's like he obviously started this trend. Everybody's so pissed about it, yet all the other social networks went, oh, why weren't we doing that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. That's a great idea. And we'll sell it under the guise of it'll stop impersonation accounts.
Well, any thoughts before I have many, but before I unload, do you want to get anything in there?
No, I'll let you go. I'm just waiting to see this.
Okay. So multiple things can be true at once. One, that the previous system was definitely elitist. One of the notes that you had mentioned in the timeline was in July 2009, Twitter launched the verification with high-profile users that it's been in contact with to confirm their ID. Okay, that's nice, but that is if you're one of the blessed few. The fact that they tried to have a verification system proved, like, there was, in response, in the fact that they had to put it on pause because there was such demand, demonstrates that there is a need for something like this. At the same time, it also demonstrates that is quite cumbersome because in a lot of cases it seems to be a manual process. Now, online crypto exchanges have figured this out because they have to follow a lot of them have to follow KYC, like know your customer, and AML, which is anti-money laundering guidelines. So they can do it. Others have been able to. Facebook has been verifying business accounts for a long time, and in both of these cases, it means uploading like a driver's license or a passport or whatever, and they've got it. There's a way to do it. It's a solved problem. Now, whether or not one should have to, I think there should be I think it's perfectly fair for there to be a cost associated with this, because especially if it's a manual process, should that be a one-time cost, or should it be part of the added value of having a Twitter Blue subscription, which gets you a bunch of other features, which you may or may not need, but you know, so many businesses were built on bundling, and you know, if you could make it a price that people don't have a problem with, sure. Some of the loudest voices complaining about this whole situation, given that they're supposed to be turning off the legacy check marks this month. They haven't done it yet. They said they were going to beginning of April. They haven't done it yet.
Rolling out. Yeah.
But some of the loudest complainers are these elites who had their blue check marks from this previous process. And many of these people are those who could most afford a paltry $8 a month. So honestly, I don't have a lot of time for the crocodile tears. Again, it's the rented land, as you talked about, and they can afford it. They should just suck it up. If this is a platform that they've not only contributed to, but they've also gotten a lot of value from over the years. A lot of people have been able to use it to help build their careers, their stature, connect with people, promote their work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a two-way thing. They give value, but they also get value out of that. Now, one of the benefits of having Twitter Blue is supposedly seeing less ads or fewer ads, and that's something that I might be on board for. Some of the other features I would need to look into a little bit more. So but the thing is, none of it makes any sense if they don't actually verify the identities. I think it's a huge mistake in the fall for them to roll this out, and then you have this whole impersonation problem. It's like, guys, you're doing it wrong. That's not solving the problem that this is supposed to fix, right? So get it, fix it. Like, but they keep sort of like almost this. It's like thinking aloud in public and just doing things and one step forward, two steps back, and it's so chaotic. So if they're going to do it, sure. If you want to make it a paid thing, cool, but make it so that the value is actually there. Now, as for this $1,000 a month for organizations, and there's that's for the gold checks. The gray checks, I believe, are mostly for like NGOs, nonprofits, and whatnot. And there's a whole way to, I guess, verify them. And for maybe it's like profit-making organizations, this $1,000 a month, and that seems like a lot of money to you and me. But from an enterprise software model, like I've looked at tools that we're considered for our business, like to help with like responding to RFPs and doing proposals and stuff like that. $14,000 a year, right? Google Analytics. Oh, if you subscribe to Google Analytics, the full enchilada with no sample data, with the whole fire hose of data, it's $12,000 a month. So it's a question of what is the value that an organization would get from this $1,000 a month, for if it can be sure that they're not getting impersonated, to help protect their brand as a brand integrity service. That might be great. And if there's other, like, honestly, I think Twitter has made a huge mistake. And part of this is Elon's contentious relationship with the media, is that one of the core customers of Twitter, aside from advertisers, are journalists, right? So you should be building in tools to make it easy for journalists, even if you disagree with some of them. And so journalists, celebrities, athletes, and then there's the whole class of entrepreneurs, people, self-promoters, and all this. But then politicians. There's a reason why Twitter has outsized mind share with the public, is because of the type of people who are on that, and they add value to that platform. Now, you want to make sure that they don't feel like they're being exploited by extortionate rates. $8 a month seems fair. $1,000 may seem high, but for organizations with budgets for these kind of things, depends on the value that they get. And maybe there's somewhere in between for different tiers of service. So agreed, it's a poop show. There are some sound principles when one goes back to first principles thinking, and if one leaves their biases out of it, however they feel about Twitter historically, which has been problematic. It's never really made money on a consistent basis, and people have complained about it literally since the very beginning. Then there's other people who have problems with Elon Musk, rightly so, for all the good he's done. He's probably problematic in a number of ways and is added a lot of chaos to the whole situation. But from a first principles perspective, there are some things here that make sense and that need to be fixed. But if they don't fix them right, they're just going to make it worse. And they're at risk of the platform kind of going in a death spiral. And that is not going to be good for anyone, because Twitter actually is valuable, and they're losing, maybe losing some people, a lot of tech people, to Mastodon, where they've got their whole little thing going there. We talked about Blue Sky, which is Jack Dorsey's, again, federated competitor to Twitter, which is kind of like the Mastodon model as well. It's unfortunate it's gone the way it has, but so that's my extended take on that. So Tasia, the second part of your story here had to do with the $1,000 checkmark, and it'll be free for the 10,000 most followed companies and the top 500.
The top 500 advertisers.
Which, hey, makes sense. That's a value add if you're spending money on a platform. Sure, cool. No problem with that whatsoever. So did you have anything to add on this, sort of side story there before we move on? Okay. Because, it sort of complements. We covered some of the stuff in there too. Yeah.
Yeah. This is as of now, because... as people freak out, this could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
If Elon has a bad day as well.
Well, yeah. And,
some of it, name, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Some of it is like, trial balloons and whatnot. But again, this is a solved problem by other types of organizations. So maybe need to hire a few engineers back and make it happen and do it right. But, and, cost recovery for sure. If there's a manual process, it's as much as you can automate. Pardon me. Cool. But so but there are some, but and again, one other weird little angle to this whole situation is that until now, and I think it's still the case, you could click on people's verified badges and see why they have a Twitter badge, and some of them are because they were previously verified, and some is because they're paying for Twitter Blue, and people have been using that as a cudgel against people in tweet threads. And doing little memes like with the whole thing is like, this MF paid for Twitter. It's almost like you are teasing people who are Twitter Blue subscribers because they're paying for Twitter and they have a verified checkmark that they paid for using the service. So there's this whole weird kind of bullying that goes on there too. Now, apparently what's going to happen, if they haven't done it already, is that it's going to make it so that there's equal footing for legacy badges.
They've done that.
And okay.
So now it says like this person has because this or correct. This.
And I think smart moves.
So they've changed language so you can't tell.
Yeah. But the thing is, they could have avoided that whole history of stupid, silly memeing and bullying if they had just made verification actually mean something at the outset.
Exactly.
How come we're not running Twitter?
Right?
I ask myself this every day.
We can carry a
long time user
head office.
Tweeting out to nobody.
Yeah.
Tweeting into the ether.
That's right. Let that sink in. We could sink into the head office like Jokester McGee. Okay. Let's move on, shall we? Now that we're finally done our...
Now that it's 8 o'clock.
That's not follow-up. That was a real story. Well done, crew. Okay,
Actual story.
So there's a whole lot of links on this, but we're not going to beat this to death. I'll just do a quick recap and get your takes, and then we can move on. How about that?
Sounds good.
So over the last number of months here in Canada, there has been talk of the intention of Rogers, which is one of the largest providers of home internet, home cable, and wireless connectivity, cell phones and the like, and a bunch of other stuff. I think they may have divested their media holdings. And they were wanting to buy out Shaw. Some people are calling it a takeover. Some people are calling it a merger. Shaw, again, very similar to Rogers in a lot of ways. They were an established home cable and internet provider. As they, for the longest time, didn't have wireless services, but then they bought Freedom Mobile, which was originally called Wind Mobile before that. And so they'd been dipping their toes into the mobile game after years and years of staying out of it altogether, because it's a tough business to make money. And despite the fact that Canadians pay more than almost anywhere in the world, this is the nature of the Canadian population density. We got a big old country and not tons of people. So that's all story. Now, there are not a ton of players in the scene. We've also got TELUS and Bell, who have traditional phone line, like landline businesses with their phones and cellular phones. And then in the more recent years have gotten into the TV business with their sort of TV over IP offerings. So you could say that there were 4 reasonably large competitors. Well, now with this merger of Rogers and Shaw, it brings it down to 3. And of course, some people have been concerned of what this does to the state of competition in Canada, and what does it mean for consumer choice and prices and the like. So we have pundits such as Michael Geist, very thoughtful people, just giving their opinions on it. And it actually went through after a bunch of concerns that were submitted to the government over the last several months. Going through his anti-competition hearings and whatnot, it was basically announced, I believe yesterday or today, that the deal, they've fulfilled the requirements of that the government were looking for, and it's now going to happen. The deal has been finalized, and I learned of that because I got an email from Shaw, being a Shaw subscriber. This was happening. I'm like, no. Now, to be fair, in the cable industry, there's not a ton of competition because Rogers and Shaw split up their territories. If you're in a Rogers territory, you could not get Shaw, and vice versa. And here in the Greater Vancouver area, it's actually flipped back and forth over the years. We were Shaw for a while, and then we were Rogers, and then we were Shaw again, as they traded various territories. Because of the way the infrastructure works, it's kind of complicated. So this is the way that they did it. There are other regional players, such as Videotron, in Quebec, for example, not to mention other players in the home internet provider services as well. But a lot of those actually rent the bandwidth from players like Shaw and Rogers and TELUS and others. And that leads into some of the concerns that had been put forward by these players. There's an article that went out across various news wires about how the Rogers-Shaw merger could benefit Canadian customers. And one of the claims, and this was ultimately what the Canadian federal government was saying, is that, it'll actually lower service costs because they'll be able to streamline their operations. And don't worry, because we have all these conditions that the new consolidated company must meet. And if they violate any of those conditions, they can be fined up to $1 billion. Apparently, the benefits of the merger, according to Rogers, will be around $1 billion annually. So that's how much savings. Now, the question is, how much of those savings will they pass along to the end customers, and how much will they retain for shareholders? And to be fair, a lot of us are shareholders through our various, investments, RSPs, some people with their pension plans through their unions and other organizations, workplaces, and the like. Now, some of those benefits tend to trickle to those people at the top end, those who are fortunate to have investments and pensions and private holdings of said stock. One of the other claims is that it will increase internet access and it will help accelerate the rollout of 5G wireless services for your smartphones. And then, of course, this will help revitalize the economy and contribute $40 billion annually and 250,000 jobs by 2026. Not sure how they come up with these calculations, but it all sounds good, and apparently was good enough to convince the federal government. And we'll see how closely they actually keep tabs on the new, much larger Rogers. Now, speaking of Freedom Mobile, which was founded by this one fellow named Anthony Lacavera a number of years ago and was sold to Shaw. It was Wind Mobile. It didn't. They had to get new investors because they didn't meet some of the Canadian ownership requirements. There's a holding company based in the Middle East, for example, and eventually Shaw stepped in and bought the majority stake, if not the entire thing, of Wind Mobile, and then eventually became Freedom Mobile. And it's kind of a fighter brand along the lines of, say, Telus' Kudo or Rogers Fido and the like, except they didn't have, like Shaw didn't have a proper, fully Prime branded service. They only had this little fighter brand, Freedom Mobile. And from what I hear, the coverage wasn't that great, etc. However, the founder of Freedom Mobile has got his knickers in a twist a little bit, and he thinks he's criticizing it. Well, part of that story is that he had actually offered to buy Freedom Mobile back from Shaw to help make this process a bit smoother for the Rogers-Shaw merger, and he was rebuffed. So apparently, I think they may be selling it off to someone else or just rolling it into Rogers' service. Not sure exactly what's happening there. But so there's a little bit of, it's a bit of bad blood there. And he had a number of criticisms and went online saying that we'll actually see the opposite of what is being promised by Rogers and the federal government, that we'll see higher prices, less innovation, and weaker customer service. Some criticism came also from TekSavvy, which is a private, a smaller independent internet service provider that has been raising alarm bells for literally months in this whole process for sort of similar reasons, in which case, in their case, they were concerned about the stipulation of the wholesale prices that they were having to buy from local say from infrastructure providers, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these independent ISPs have to buy bandwidth from Rogers, Shaw, Telus, Bell, and the like. And the way things are going, again, there's going to be one less provider, and the provisions in the agreement didn't really favor independent ISPs as much as folks like TekSavvy really wanted. Anyhow, so that's all a long-winded way of saying that we now have one less major connectivity provider in Canada. Some may say, well, in the States, they're 10 times the population of us. They only have Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, especially after T-Mobile and Sprint were allowed to merge. So why should we have more than they do in the United States? And one could have an honest discussion about that. Again, I think there are additional smaller brands, MVNOs they're known as, and like Cricket and others that, and there's that one Mint Mobile as well that Ryan Reynolds was involved with. but again, those are all smaller players. You've got the big three.
That's going to be purchased as well.
Exactly. The consolidation. These are not easy businesses to get in. They're very capital intensive, infrastructure heavy. If you're building your own towers or laying your own fiber optic cables, or you have high other types of high costs based on like leasing either bandwidth or be it wired or wireless bandwidth from the big folks. Anyhow, so let's start with you, Teja. What's your take on this? Is this merger a good thing or a bad thing ultimately for Canadians?
Well, I'm not living there, so I'm just going to keep it at generally I find more competition is better, but Will?
Yeah, I will. I'm not going to totally just give a one-word answer, but I'm with you on that. I think that normally more solutions are better, despite what they convince the Canadian government of. So I guess we'll see now that it's official. But yeah, I prefer more options rather than fewer. I think it actually leads to competition rather than lower costs. And as it is, there's enough trouble with them colluding to keep everything down, or quote unquote colluding. So yeah, I would definitely like more options.
Well, I think we're all on the same page there. It's just a question of the economic realities. None of us have to run a major connectivity provider. I'm not sure why the Shaw family want to get out of it. It was also kind of interesting because these are both like legacy companies too. You've got the Rogers family and the Shaw family. And the Shaw was, well, I guess one of the other things is Shaw is a Western-based company based in Alberta. So again, they're getting absorbed by another large Toronto-based company. So now all we have here in the West is TELUS, based in Alberta and BC. And so Bell and Rogers are both based in Ontario. So yeah, we shall see. Not a big fan of it myself. More choice, I think, is better. Some of them, like, I guess one of the things you could say is like, well, hey, if you want to, if you can consolidate all you want, but let's open up to foreign competition. That's one of the things, like, there's no Verizon or AT&T. And I mean, they have maybe expressed interest in coming to Canada, even though it's a smaller market, but it could be accretive to their business. But of course, the regulations, the government regulations, favor the incumbents for those ownership requirements that we mentioned earlier, and why Wind Mobile had to find new investors and then were subsequently bought by Shaw and rebadged Freedom Mobile. So the hometown players have that advantage there. And how much protection should they continue to get if they continue to consolidate? Anyhow, everything's awesome.
Yeah.
One other little quick story that we were hoping to have Gray here for, but unfortunately was not able to join us. And that is, we had a little bit of positive news. There's from NASA about the Artemis II moon crew. And this was actually a follow-up story. We had talked about the previous Artemis missions. It's sort of NASA finally going back to the moon. Well, Artemis II, they're going to be sailing around the moon. They're not going to be landing, but they're going to be doing moon orbits. But it's, first manned mission to the moon's area, vicinity, in a long, long time, since the 70s, basically. But one of the nice parts of the story is that we've got a Canadian who's going to be one of the 4 astronauts. And I got to tell you, I'm getting some big time Buzz Lightyear energy from this guy.
Oh yeah.
Look at that, is one strong chin and jawline.
I think he played football in college.
Yeah. So his name is
Jeremy Hansen.
Jeremy Hansen. Thank you, Teja. So yeah, you can find out more about the Artemis II mission in the Canadian, I don't know if it's called, Canadian Space Agency website that we will have a link for in the show notes. But so we've got 4 astronauts, one female astronaut, 3 male astronauts. One of the male astronauts is Canadian, Jeremy Hansen, and he is stoked. He's got a little video on the Canadian Space Agency website, and it sort of has a little overview of previous moon missions, the Apollo missions initially. And it's kind of a good feel-good story. You can learn all about it if you're into space, or if you've got any young ones in your life that are into space. It's always nice to have someone from your own region or country represent. I remember when back in the 80s, being excited when we had people like Mark Garneau, Canadian astronaut, getting involved with the space shuttle missions, or the Canadarm, or Canadarm for short, the Canadian technology behind the large arm that they use to remove payloads from the space shuttle cargo deck and whatnot. So Artemis II, we will, of course, be tracking this mission more closely as it continues to unfold. You guys are super stoked, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Unfortunately, that kind of screwed up the segue. That was supposed to be at the beginning of the show. But one little segue is there's a trailer for yet another tech-related movie. We said the Tetris one that's now on Apple TV Plus. Haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But we got another one called BlackBerry. It's about the story of Research in Motion, the makers of the BlackBerry. And stars Jay Baruchel and an unrecognizable Glenn Howerton, who you may know from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, rocking the male pattern baldness there, which I'm well on my way toward. But the trailer, it looks like it's not like a serious business, sort of dramatization. It's like a comedy. It's fun and exciting, and I can't wait till it comes in theaters, May 12th. You down for that, Will?
Oh yeah, that looks fun.
What's that, Tasia?
I love Jay Baruchel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you'll have to leave your house and go and see it in the movies. Go support local cinema, right? Okay. Other entertainment news. Oh boy, okay, well, the new official Sonic game straight up kills. Why do they call him the bastard?
This is why I'm letting people peek behind the curtain. He's always like, you got to give the official name of the article. It's like, do you really want the official name of this article?
Well, it's going to be on screen anyway, so no problem putting it in the show notes. What's the story here? What happened to Sonic? What's going on?
This is one of these things where it came out just before April Fool's. It came out on Friday, and it's essentially a bit of a April Fool's joke, but it is an actual game. They made a full game. Like it's not a joke in the sense that they're teasing something they didn't do. Like they actually made one. It's not a big deep game, but it is a game that they've made. Apparently people think it's pretty fun for what it is. It was made not by Sega itself, but an outside company.
And Sega published it, right?
Yeah, Sega published it. And it's just, I think, just for fun, right? They are quick to say it's not canon. And it takes place at a party for one of the characters. It involves all Sonic characters, and it's somebody's birthday party on a train. And it may or may not be a murder mystery party, maybe a real murder. So yes, it's just, I think, a fun way of looking at your own franchise or your own character in a more lighthearted tone. Although I guess this is about killing, but just having fun with the character itself, and being self-referring and knowing your own universe. And again, I think this is when April Fools, to me, I hate April Fools. I'm just going to say this. Like, I just stay off social media until noon. This is when it's fun because they actually do something that you can enjoy. Like, this is something that they've produced that you can actually have fun with, and you're all in on the joke. I don't like mean humor. I don't like pranking people. So for me, pretending that something's coming out that's not, and then when people are all keen about it, you go, ha ha, April Fools or something. If it's something like a toilet seat phone, of course that's ridiculous. No one's ever going to do it. Or maybe not. But yeah, so I mean, this is the kind of April Fools I like, and there's actually something that you can play that's something a little
real
fun
behind it. Yeah. Well, Think Geek, the sort of nerdy e-commerce website that was around.
That used to be,
back in the day. They used to have April Fools type things, and then if they got enough response for specific products that they whimsically tease on April Fools, they would actually go and make them. And I have one of them, which is a little mini arcade cabinet for your iPad with a full-on controls.
They actually made more than one of the products that they were joking about. And that almost became a thing. Like everyone knew that they made fake products every year. So it was a thing that people actually were keen to see what funny thing they would come up with. So again, it kind of felt to me like that was another good example where people were in on the joke after a while.
Exactly. Kasia, are you an April Fool's fan?
No.
Right. You don't like fun?
I mean, I'm an adult and I just don't understand like the prank aspect, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, the joy has died inside. So you like being an adult, you like adult things, like your pick of the week. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes. Okay. This is like a bit more of a serious pick of the week for once for me. It's not a funny pick of the week, but it's like only really a few episodes long. I don't know what you call that when it's not like an ongoing series, but it's from Anderson. Yeah, it's from Anderson Cooper and it's called All There Is. And he explores grief and loss. And it kind of starts with his recordings going through his mom's apartment, cleaning it out. His mother was Gloria Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt dynasty. And so that's kind of where it starts off. But he ends up talking to, you know, like other celebrities and like people that have gone through grief and stuff and like how exactly to deal with it and, you know, how you move on from that point, basically. And they talk about different types of grief and loss. So it is emotional at times, but it's a very good listen. I binged the whole thing like immediately.
Now, if we're not oversharing too much, you lost someone in your life in the last month or so. Have you found that this podcast has helped you work through some of your thoughts and feelings about that whole situation?
So funny enough, I actually binged this before I lost my Nona, but I've lost, you know, other people as well. So it was helpful in a way. And also to be able to reflect back on what they talk about in the podcast, because it's just like interesting how other people go through those same motions and the different types of grief. You know, it's not just always with like a death or something, but
it could be the loss of a relationship or, for example.
Yeah. Somebody, you know, somebody being sick, somebody, you know, like they talk a lot about terminal illnesses and like you feel like you've lost a person before they're even gone, you know, it's just a lot. So it's very interesting, but it's well done in terms of like, you're not just gonna like cry the whole time. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not,
luckily I'm dead inside so already. So
but it's just a really nice, honest, open portrayal. Cause like I don't feel like people talk about it enough. It's something every single person goes through and nobody really shares or talks about it. So All There Is with Anderson Cooper. It's a great little listen.
Good pick. See, was that so hard?
No, but it took more time.
Okay, Will, real quick, what's your pick?
My pick is something that I actually enjoyed more than I thought I was. I mean, often the third movie can be a bit of a letdown. You know, the first movie is often meeting people. Second movie, stuff gets real. Third movie is resolution, and you're always disappointed with the resolution. I enjoyed this. This was Creed 3, and actually directed and starring Michael B. Jordan, who I'm a big fan of. I don't know what you guys think of him, but I
Killmonger in the Black Panther.
Yeah,
and this is Killmonger versus.
The Kang the Conqueror,
right? Yeah. It's like a Marvel rematch.
Yeah, exactly. And I enjoyed this a lot. I mean, it's not going to win any Oscars, I don't think, but I was really struck. I think Rocky series or Rocky/Creed series is always known for how it captures, you know, a boxing match and how visceral and close it is, and how it really makes it even more entertaining than a real boxing match. This was particularly good. I did the boxing style, particularly of I forget the actor's name, the person who plays the antagonist.
Mm-hmm. I'll look it up, but I don't recall either.
Kang.
Yes. Is it Jonathan Majors?
Yeah, Jonathan Majors. Yeah. I thought his boxing style was supposed to be unorthodox for many reasons. You know, I thought it really captured. I mean, often they try to do something different and it's not clear, I think, to people who aren't insiders. It was pretty clear, I think, that it was just a very different style and it matched his character and it was very interesting and made for better action. I really enjoyed it.
Well, we got to see it together, and that was when was that?
A couple days ago.
Yeah, that was Sunday night. And Tasia, we can't wait till you're back where you belong here in the Great White North, so we can see movies together.
Yes.
One of the remarkable things I found about Jonathan Majors' performance is that you could feel the pain, you could feel the resentment, everything in his face. It was all there. And there's a history between the two characters, Tasia, which we won't get into here, but there's, you know, it's like old friends that had been apart for a long time for a kind of a tragic reason. And now that this fella's another opportunity to have a shot at glory. But you can tell there's a lot that's driving a big chip on his shoulder, but I thought it was really well acted, well directed. Like you said, the boxing scene is very visceral. So I would second your thumbs up on that one for sure. So if you want to go see a couple of oiled up men punch each other for a couple hours,
who wouldn't?
Right? And it's not just the two of them. There's other matches too. So, you know, you have take your pick.
Hot. Not gonna say no.
HAWT, right? Hot.
Wow.
My pick is also a movie that I got the opportunity to see an early screening of, thanks Cine Club, and that was Air, and that is directed by and starring Ben Affleck, also starring Matt Damon, and it is about also Viola Davis, I believe, and Jason Bateman. It is the story of Nike's courting of Michael Jordan and the eventual creation of the Air Jordan line of sneakers. And I think they take a few liberties in there. When I first saw the initial hero image of Ben Affleck as Phil Knight in the full-on wraparound sunglasses and the crinkly 80s jogging suit, and it's like the perm, everything. It was so on point. And I saw it with a good friend who's big basketball fan, and had the opportunity to go to this screening, and it was packed, the screening, but it was a lot of fun. The first act was 80s nostalgia overload, almost a bit much, and then the movie hits its stride, and it's a compelling story. It's about as compelling as it can be for a story for which you already know the outcome, which is a real art to be able to do that. So and that is Air, and that is in theaters, and it will be coming to Amazon Prime not too long afterward as well. But again, if you're able to see, it's not a must see in the theaters, but it just, you know, it makes it a bit more enjoyable, I think. What do you think, Tasia?
I like that feedback. I'll wait till it goes on Prime.
Okay. And you've got we just have one project this week. Will, you got no beats for us this week?
No, okay. I'm close.
Okay. Then Tasia, over to you. What was the long-awaited? Speaking of matchups,
guys, this is my YouTube video on ChatGPT versus Bard, and I spent 1 million hours on it, and it's flailing. It is getting nothing, like no views. It's not showing up. I know, none of my keywords are ranking anymore. It's like I got blacklisted or something. I have no idea. I've changed like keywords. I've changed the title. I changed the thumbnail. I've tried like everything. It's stagnant. I need you all to go into all different browsers.
Like,
set your
subscribe,
VPNs different.
Just start running into stores all down the street.
Yes.
Can I use your computer for a sec?
Exactly. So I spent so much friggin' time on it. I'm like so bummed. Anyway.
Oh
it's
yeah,
a really
765
good,
views. Because you normally have
Yeah.
thousands of views on your videos.
And I thought this one was gonna pop. Like I thought I was gonna put it up and it was gonna like, you know.
It's so of the
and
moment, yeah.
It didn't, and I don't know why none of my keywords are ranking. So it's crazy to me. But anyway, guys, it's a really good in-depth review on. I put both of them to the test, and I do like 5 key categories. So I talk about like user, like design feature kind of thing, and then we do like a speed test, accuracy test, creativity test, and overall helpfulness. So I'm really putting them head to head, and then I determine a winner. I'm not gonna tell you who it is.
So do we need to like redo your headline again? It's like, I pit 2 enormously powerful AIs together head to head. You won't believe what happens next. And then have your face being like, ah, and having like fire and drama and like a doge and
yeah.
You won't believe. I know.
One AI stole my password.
Exactly. Yeah, like something ridiculous. Oh,
that's a shame. Well, we'll have to. So everyone out there, you got to go and check out Tasia's video, which you can find at.
Yes, go to youtube.com/Tasia Custodi, or you know what? You can even just literally Google Tasia Custodi, ChatGPT versus Bard. It'll come out. Do it.
And then share it on all the socials, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Mastodons, the Instagrams. Oh, yes. we got to do what we can. And then do that for Momentous too. If you want to find out more about us, you can visit momentous.tv/links. You can find out about our team at momentous.tv/team, including Tasia's links there too. And you could also visit us at momentous.tv/podcast, where we have how many? I think almost 100 of our episodes, audio only episodes, uploaded now. We're in the final stretch. We've almost caught up. And then within a couple of weeks, hopefully you'll be able to find it in all your favorite podcast players. All right, we did it, guys.
Whoop, whoop.
You're still awake, Tasia. Well done.
Boy, hanging in.
But we had fun, and we'll have to send our best out to Gray, who was unfortunately not able to join us at the end of the day. Hope we'll have the band back together next week. But until then, we hope your week is truly momentous.